Bonjour, everyone. I am thrilled. This has been a day that I said earlier, I couldn't have dreamed a better day for me. Um, the day started, at 1 o'clock with Gary Farmer, Missy Whiteman, and Kurt Kirby. And then we had people at 2 o'clock. We had Nadonis, Rose Green, a photographer who's up and coming, doing great things, and Paul Tranny from Adobe. And then at 3 o'clock, we had Pam Bellegarde, Rihanna Yazzie, and Hondo Lewis, all talking about respecting Indigenous storytelling traditions. Right before this panel now, we had Chaz Wagner and Jeremy Gardner talking about audio production and jobs in audio. And now this is, it's all building momentum for this moment, really, because Native Report has been, producing just great programming for over a decade, right? We're heading in, 13 years, I think, is what you can all say this because this is all in your back pocket. But it's just really an honor to have you here at Thunder inDIGIfest and to talk about maybe your perspective on Indigenous reporting, on the stories that are out there that present themselves, how you see the future, maybe happening, with our students who are preparing themselves to do this work, because somebody mentioned earlier, it's a wave. The wave has begun. And we want to be able to, usher that in the best way possible. So if you all just want to introduce yourself a little bit, I'll step back and let you take care. I said it's nice to do this work with producers because you recognize the flow. I don't even really have to do anything. So thank you for being here, and I'll zip it now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh. It's my little phone jack or the headphone jack that's having a problem. I just wanted to say thank you for inviting us. It's a real honor that you included us with the Weekends Festival and Native Report. I'm Michael LeGarde. I'm the senior producer of Native Report. I've been with the show since 2009. That's when I took over the producing duties from the former producer. What can I tell you about the show? I don't know if any of the audience members are familiar with the show, but just give you a little background and I'll try to be brief with it. But the show was developed out of tragedy, and that tragedy was, of course, the shooting in Red Lake. At that time, my colleague, Tad Johnson, who is actually the founder of the show, he used to have the co-hosting duties also. But he saw that there was a lot of negative media attention because of the Red Lake shooting. And it was just, stereotypes in the print media. The broadcast media was just concerned about, how bad conditions were on reservations. And it was just a host of just really bad media. And Tad Johnson's idea was, hey, maybe we should have a program that, accentuates the good that is out there, and the stories that are positive, that shed a different light on reservation life, on Native life, on Native issues. So that was the birth of Native Report, and that first episode dealt with the Red Lake shooting, and we've been on the air since 2004. We just wrapped up our 16th season. We like covering as many topics as you can think of. We're only limited by the number of shows that we offer during a season. This last season was only 10 episodes long. That's enough time for about 30 stories, and then we have interstitials in there. We have Health Matters with Dr. Arnie Vinio, which is very popular, and then we have we have an elders segment, and we've been toying with the idea of maybe changing that up with another segment. Anyway, I'm Mike LeGarde, I'm the producer, and thank you, and I'll hand it over to Ramona.
Hello, everybody. Again, mirroring what Mike said, thank you so much for inviting us to speak at this special event. I have been with the show since July, so I am newer to the show. I spent 7 years reporting in a newsroom in Duluth in Canal Park. I was at KBJR 6 now with Native Report, so it is really a change of atmosphere and environment, and I love being able to focus on Native stories purely. That has been a passion of mine since I worked with the Native American Journalists Association. I'm a proud tribal member of the Bad River Band in Odina, Wisconsin, and I can't wait to share more about the show. I will pass it over to Rita.
Buju, Nangikwe, Indigenous Ajagjak, and Dudem, Nagachu, Nangin Dun Jaba. Hello, everybody. My name is Rita Aspinwall. I am the co-host for Native Report, along with our other co-host, Ernie Stevens III. But I've been a part of Native Report for a few years now, and I love it. It's a really great opportunity. I love covering stories. I love learning more about Indian country stories across the United States. And yeah, I just want to say thank you for inviting us.
So glad that you're here. I said this earlier, but it really is. So I worked at PBS from 1997 to 2000 and on the Wasa and Abada series. And then when Native Report came about, I was just like, oh, look at this. You know, it was so exciting. And remember back in the 70s, Mike, there was a show that, was it Hool was on, Indian Report? No, Indian, what was it called?
Oh gosh, Indian Viewpoint.
Yeah.
And that was actually with Dr. Robert Paulus, I believe, hosted it. And he was the brains behind it. So in Duluth, Minnesota, and that's where we're based, the station is based. That's where we produce Native Report. That was actually the first of its kind. It was the first public affairs programming that was dedicated to Native issues. Dr. Robert Paulus was instrumental in setting that up. Again, it was, I don't want to say it was tragedy that set that up, but there is no news being discussed practically during the 70s, unless it had to do with the uprising at Alcatraz or maybe out in Wounded Knee. You know, of course, those things caught attention. But again, there wasn't anything in the region here. In Minnesota's, we've got 11 tribal nations, you know, a large Native presence within the state. There always has been, even before Minnesota was Minnesota. So in the 70s, we had this public affairs programming, and at that time, it was just a sit-down talk show. That was the format. Rarely did they show any other kind of video or have I don't know, any other kind of segments. So it was usually just one long discussion about whatever Native issue. It might be education, it might be language. So I see, you know, I come to Native Report not really thinking that I'm carrying that tradition on, I guess, that was set by Dr. Robert Paulus, and but there is a need for Native programming out there. You know, we're I shouldn't say, we took part in another Zoom conference, and this was with producers, personnel from public television stations across the United States. Some of the folks, they had questions about, you know, well, in our state, there aren't many natives. And I was like, well, you may not have reservations, and there are a lot of states out there that don't have reservations, don't have federally recognized tribes. But the thing I pointed out to, the point I wanted to make was, you have a Native presence. Just about every major city across the United States has an American Indian Center. And that's what the first thing a lot of Native people, when they move to a big city like Chicago, Denver, Minneapolis, Duluth even, is search out other Natives or a American Indian Center, for lack of a better term. So a lot of people may not realize, but Natives are all around us. We do have issues that we like to talk about, topics that we hold very dear. Might be culture, might be language, might be history. But then, you know, we're of the modern age too. It's maybe an extension of the storytelling tradition, because that's, we as Native people, we've grown up with that. We've known Native stories, the oral tradition. So maybe this is just an offshoot of that. And the thing I think about Native Report, it's not so much our involvement as much as the people, because this is their voice. It's told, their stories are told through their voices and their experiences. But yeah, it's in the 70s, there was a program. It went off the air for a while, and you know, I worked for 2 TV stations in the Duluth market, in addition to PBS. I've also worked for a radio station in Duluth here also. So I do know that the only time that Native issues get discussed is if there's something that's negative or sensationalistic. Rarely do you hear about the good things, you know, and they might not even be good things. It might be just something that's completely off the radar. You know, we had a concert violinist who's Native, but she talked about, you know, the influences on her life, about her upbringing and how that comes out through her music. We talk with language instructors. We talk with celebrities, personalities, tribal chairpersons. So it runs the gamut. But yeah, it's an extension of that storytelling tradition.
Right. And I think the way that you know, as writers, as on-air talent, as reporters, like the way that you approach the Native people that you're highlighting or focusing or, you know, drawing attention to, that is all the difference, really, because we see it when we see other people try to report on our people, right? There's like, it's not always as fluid or organic, or, you know, we don't feel the same way about it, but you are able to draw out people because of the maybe nonverbals or the way we communicate or whatever it is, that maybe it's the tobacco, you know, right? That we come with, or that you are approaching them with, and that's huge. I mean, other people might not see it or recognize it, but I definitely do. Like I see Ramona when she's out there working, that is, you know, you're drawing it out. When Rita is interviewing people about, you know, the work that they're doing, that is what makes the difference. Maybe some stories about that, either Ramona or Rita?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off of what Mike said too. And I just wanted to stress that when media does parachute in to Indian country for the tragedies and to cover the bad, and they don't develop those relationships with Indian country and, you know, really focus on also the positive just as much as the negative, it really illuminates a distrust between bands and mainstream media that I don't feel is there with Native Report. I feel like we're well trusted, and I think that makes all the difference, that people are willing to share their stories with us. And that's what's so powerful, is being able to, elevate Native voices from the Native perspective. It's been really a great experience working with the show, and something that I've been really focusing on with the show is, we want, like Rita had mentioned earlier, we're covering from our region and across Indian country. So it's really nice to utilize freelancers that elevate Native voices from the Native perspective, and it allows a broader reach, voices to be heard that maybe we wouldn't hear from. So speaking of that, and students that are, in video production on this call, think about this for yourself, and also share it with somebody who you think it might be a good opportunity for. But we are looking for talented storytellers, journalists, documentarists, filmmakers, and we're currently solidifying season 17 budget for that, but we are in the meantime accepting applications and story pitches for future seasons. So our coverage reach is Indian country as a whole and beyond. Our show has been on nearly 200 channels in 28 states, as well as our social media reach. So I also feel like, many of the freelancers we've worked with are Native American freelancers, and giving them that opportunity and that platform to share experiences in Indian country is really powerful. And we have a goal of hearing Indian country stories from places we haven't been to yet. So we're always looking in those areas, and, like Mike said, there is a presence, a Native American presence, even in states that might not have many federally recognized bands or unfederally recognized bands. But we are dedicated to hiring freelancers from across the country, North America, and in some instances we've had talks about perhaps, going beyond that reach for segments ranging from stories of environmental justice to illuminating people stepping up in their communities in noteworthy ways. And right now with the pandemic, I just feel like these positive stories coming out of Indian country are extremely powerful. We have a couple of videos, and Jeremy has those that we can play for you that gives you a little taste of Native Report. But before we dive in, and I'll let Rita answer the question too, but before we dive into that jingle dress piece, a little background on that is there is a pandemic tie-in, because the jingle dress dance tradition became surrounding the Spanish flu from 100 years ago. And so that 1918 Spanish flu, the story behind, if you go to the Native Report page, you can view the jingle dress segment that we had in our first episode of season 16. And it was really interesting to hear from Brenda Child and hear her as a historian talk about compare this current pandemic we're living in right now, talk about that past pandemic, and how this very important tradition came out of the dark time in history.
I could probably just add in a couple more things. Just to echo what Mike and Ramona were saying, is that to me, Native Report seems very well respected in the Indigenous communities. So I think that really does help when we approach certain people about a story. That definitely helps, because it kind of plays along the same lines of storytelling, and having an Indigenous person telling an Indigenous story, that really helps. That really helps with interviews. That really helps with the approach, and also just the execution of it. I had another thing that I wanted to say, but I think Ramona and Mike covered it. So yeah, I'm excited for everybody to see the new segment, or the segment about the jingle dress.
One of the reasons why we wanted to kind of dance where our ancestors once walked is a way of remembrance and a way to remember their resilience, and their blood runs through our veins, and even though everything is happening, we have faith.
And this is something that Ojibwe and American Indians know very well. They know that art and dance and songs and beauty, the creation of a jingle dress, are all part of healing.
And then when they get in front of the camera, their strength and their courage and the women they are, it comes through in the images. 1, 2, 3. And I at times just cry because it's just so amazing to me how wonderful their lives are going to be when they become leaders and when they become our future.
I'm Brenda Child, a professor of American Studies and American Indian Studies at the University of Minnesota. I'm Red Lake Ojibwe. I guess the way I feel about the pandemic is that I never really wanted to see one happen. But if another one had to happen, I'm kind of glad it happened during my lifetime, because as someone who studied and thought for years about the pandemic of 1918-19, it's interesting to see, to be part of society, to be part of, Indian country during this pandemic. We know that when we get very sick, your body has to recover. But what we also perhaps are less attentive to is the psychological healing. I know people who've had, chronic disease or sudden illness all talk about the psychological dimension. I think Western medicine, until recent years, has dismissed the psychological dimensions of healing, and this is something that Ojibwe and American Indians know very well. They know that art and dance and songs and beauty, the creation of a jingle dress, are all part of healing. And it's when art becomes medicine.
So if I could just add in just real quick, but stories like that story is what really, really gets me excited about being able to be part of the Native Report team. Having that education piece alone to so many different viewers across the United States. That's what I'm really passionate about, and that's what I'm so proud of the Native Report team and all the stories that have the chance to come on, be interviewed, and be shown to our viewers. So I just wanted to add that.
And I love that it's connecting Native communities, across the continent and beyond, really, with, digital capabilities that, there's interest in these stories around the globe, but definitely, across the continent as we're, as you're nationally syndicated. That's just so exciting to think that, these stories are being shared in this way. Do you have any favorites, like things that really spark you, that you can reach through the screen, so our students, and they go, yes, I'll get involved,
I guess I'll take off on this one, but I like talking with the elders. They have a lifetime of experience and knowledge, and sometimes they just want to be heard, and it's really tough when I've talked with an elder, and then maybe a couple of years later, I'll hear that they have passed. And that's happened on this show. We've had a number of elders that we've talked with, and some beautiful people, just some wonderful humans, and they've passed on. And then another story I like doing are artists. I'm just intrigued by visual artists or musicians. I think the creativity that those folks have is just, I'm just so jealous of it, I don't really see my job as creating as much as just helping somebody to tell their story. There's no magic involved with making somebody's story, but there is a lot of magic involved with an artist putting his vision down on canvas or a piece of paper, or a musician like yourself, Liz, creating music when there was no music before, you know. So I like doing the artists and talking with the elders, and I'm a little bit of a political junkie, so I do like the political stories that we've done. We haven't done many in the past 4 years, but that's because there was a different situation politically across the United States at that time. So, but those are the stories I like doing, talking with the elders and the artists, and delving into politics.
You sell yourself short. I think it is absolutely magic bringing those stories together. And
Thank you. Thank you.
just doing it, you know, in a way that really can tell a bigger story and builds those connections. Yeah, us artists, we're really kind of focused in on our own little, we're just, you know, doing our own thing.
Funny.
Ramona, did you have a favorite that you want to?
I did. My favorite in season 16 of Native Report, which I really want the students to go to the Native Report page and watch that episode. If for anything, to listen to the music that was, so we traveled, I'll explain about the song in a moment. We traveled to the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, because in November 2020, they opened a fish company to further sovereignty efforts and benefit the community. With the goal of this new venture in mind, the manager of the company, Daisy Perez Defoe, shared with me that they're providing tribal fishermen fair pay for their catches, something she says they weren't always getting. And Daisy, the manager of that fish company, said that when the fish company opened and they started offering that for the anglers' catches, it actually, she says, other places started, you know, paying more as well too. So it pretty much like evened out the, you know, set that pay rate up. And so they really made a big difference. So I really liked that story. And at the opening, the ribbon cutting of the fish company, a couple of men played a song that was made by Red Cliff Band Fisherman. And it was a song about fishing on Lake Superior. And it's a really powerful, beautiful song. And it's just, when you go to these gatherings and there usually is drumming and singing, and that, to me, I always really enjoy editing that into my pieces. And usually when Native Report goes and covers something, it's so visually engaging. I know that with powwow season, not really as lively because of the pandemic. You know, that's an example of some of the really visually appealing stories that Native Report tells. I love the beauty of that in the pieces. And I can't wait for them to start again, and I can't wait to go.
I can probably share a couple of my favorites. I have a little list going. I'm trying to take notes so I remember all of my thoughts. But one of my recent favorites is the new installation of following the Indigenous perspective medical student, Jaja Greensky. So the idea is to follow her through medical school and kind of get that inside look of her experience and her journey. So that's really amazing. Also, Joyce Laporte's Faceless Dolls. We covered her a couple seasons ago, and Any segment with our Indigenous elders, I mean, it's invaluable, honestly. It's such a great experience to hear from them and cover that story, so people can tune into those episodes and really learn just a little snapshot. Okay. Also, FYI, I'm a really big foodie, so a couple seasons ago we did a food segment with Keisha Hart, and she cooked for us, and I tried helping her as much as I could. I think I was tasting more than helping, but that was a really fun segment. So those are my favorite. I could probably go on and on, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, I just want to jump back in there, and Rita, I'm sorry, but the segment that you mentioned, the cookie segment, we're in this the kitchen setup in our studios, and I think that shoot lasted maybe about 3 hours, 2.5, 3 hours, and we had to condense that down into 7.5 minutes. So yeah, maybe there is magic involved with making TV. But I was reminded here about some stories also. You know, we used to pandemic. We went out to the Temecula reservation, the Pechanga people in Southern California. We saw this amazing sacred being, and it's called the Great Oak. And you can type in, you know, the browser search bar and just type Great Oak native report, and you'll find the episode. But then that's another thing that I like. I don't want to say that they're well, they are sacred sites, but that's another thing that we're able to get access to. We've been to rock paintings in Red Rock Canyon. We've been to other rock art sites, Petroglyph National Monument in Albuquerque, New Mexico, just outside of Albuquerque. You know, and the Little Spirit tree, Little Spirit cedar tree, Montadugijiganis up in Grand Portage. We're able and lucky enough to have an elder from Grand Portage to talk about that show. But yeah, we could go on and on about stories, and I know there's only a limited time, and I'm sorry to take up so much time. So.
Well, it's good. We're doing good. It's 5:34. We still have some time. And so maybe this is where we swing to talking about how you got started. All the students out there who have desire to work in media might be thinking, yeah, I'm a student, but how am I going to get to that position? How will I ever get there? And everybody has their own, path that we get there. And I like to think that it's a work in progress. We still have stuff ahead of us, but how did you get started?
Well, myself, I actually started out in radio, and that was just a friend of my family who asked me one summer what I was doing for a summer job, and I said, well, I'm still searching, and he was like, hey, come up and catalog our record library. And I was like, oh, sure, and they paid me, and I was in, and that was the start, I guess, in a communication field, because that's what I have a degree in, a 4-year degree in communication, with the emphasis in public relations and photography. But if you're interested in entering into a field, I started out with just doing photography too, just a simple camera, just by myself personally, right? But when I had my first job with a television station, I didn't have any video to show. I just had a portfolio of photographs. And my boss just looked through what I had, saw that I could, frame a shot, think about the composition of a shot, the elements that went into that shot, and, got hired. But I didn't have a hard video background. I was a photographer. I wrote for the college newspaper. I did photography for the college newspaper. and that just helped. You know, and nowadays, you know, you know, it's a different field than when I was getting into, you know, and that's ancient history now. But you know, you can make your own video now on your phones and do that, and you know, you can post it to wherever now, and maybe get a following that way too. You know, so I don't know. It's a different way, but you know, there are ways that are that work. You know, if you have a solid visual background, if you have a solid writing background, I think that all helps. But yeah, that was my entry into the business. Worked for it for a while. Went to work for public relations for tribal government, and then I got back into the field of production.
So for me, I took advantage of all the journalism programs that exist for Native Americans, and with the mission of getting more natives in the newsroom and training more native storytellers, I, in 2008, attended the Crazy Horse Journalism Conference. There I received a scholarship for my attendance at St. Cloud State University. They have a great broadcast program. So I attended SCSU, and during my times in studying, I spent my summers at internships at newspapers, and I got placed at those internships through the American Indian Journalism Institute. Unfortunately, that AIJI is no longer existent. I was very, very sad to see that program go. But I was one of the grads there, and you would go for a couple of weeks to South Dakota, receive journalism training in so many different things, and then they would place you at internships at print newspapers that they had partnerships with. Then I also was a student mentor. I started as a student with the Native American Journalists Association, and those were summer journalism trainings for youth. We received training in print, radio, broadcast, television. So that was absolutely amazing to be training underneath Native journalism experts who guided you along the way, and you were paired up with a mentor, which I later became a mentor. And I still have one of the stories that I worked on down in Florida in the Everglades, when I was helping one of the mentees on a project, and we went through the Billy Swamp Safari, and I got to hold an alligator. Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic, the types of situations that you get into as a journalist. I love it. I just love learning and meeting new people. And then I also served as a board member for the Native American Journalists Association. And then now I'm a lifetime member, and they have annual conferences that are amazing for networking, and you can go and you can sit in on panels like this about covering Indian country. I'm not sure if their next one is going to be virtual or not due to the pandemic. But I then left St. Cloud State University. I served as the first news apprentice at WCCO in Minneapolis, and that was a one-year apprenticeship program where I got to spend a month in like different areas of the station. So I could spend it with the producers, then with the reporters, then with the assignment desk, then with I'm really into events. So I really loved my time in the communications department. at WCCO, and I kind of was able to feel the community engagement requests that the anchors were getting. And I did some batting practice buddies where I would, coordinate the WCCO program where like they supported like kids like getting to go to the baseball games. And so I really liked doing that and meeting the families, and that were, that pretty much won that prize that the station was doing. So that was really, really fun. I just remember learning so many valuable things at that apprenticeship, such as how to give a proper handshake and not nod my head all the time when somebody's talking to me. Then I applied to news stations after that apprenticeship ended across the country. I threw out so many of my applications. I think I probably applied to 50 places. Didn't hear back from any of them except KBJR 6 in Duluth, Minnesota. Came up here. I remember that like it was yesterday. I remember I first arrived at the wrong building, but I was eager and I was early, and then I got to the newsroom like right on time, and I wasn't upset about waiting, but I still like sat in the lobby and was waiting for them to come get me for the tour and the interview, and I was just so happy that I made it there. And I was glad that they were letting me sit and like, I'm glad I had that 10 minutes to process all the running I had just been doing. And so I spent 7 years at that TV station. And while I was at the TV station on the side, I worked on a documentary for WDSE WRPT, opioids crisis in the Northland. And that was such an amazing experience. That I also worked on a documentary on the missing and murdered Indigenous women pandemic. Then the rest is history. Now I'm here. Now I'm with Native Report. I serve as a multi-platform producer, and I spend some time on the Native Report show and on the Almanac North show, which is a public affairs program, news program every Friday at 8 p.m. on PBS North. Highly suggest you check it out and like our Facebook page, but this is about Native Report right now, so I won't get into that. But I'd encourage young journalists to network, find a journalist you look up to in the area and reach out to them and pick their brains, because they're going to be honored that you want to do that. And if anybody asks them if they know of a journalist good for a job that has opened up, they're going to think of you right away. And there's so much networking that you can do while you're currently studying. And I wish I was in your shoes. I wish I was in college again. I'm 30 now, and my college years were I'm gonna do this reminiscing thing about college, but I loved it to learn. You're in such a great position right now.
So I don't think how I got here is very traditional. I went to Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College. I'm an alumni, super proud, shout out to Fond du Lac. But I was a really active student in our school community, and I was dabbling in some modeling. And after modeling for a few photos, Fond du Lac College was actually going to do a commercial, and they asked me if I would like to participate in that. And I thought, why not? Sure, why not? I like doing fun things. They said they would feed me lunch, and I said, that's all I need. But so over 2 days, we recorded a commercial, and I love the commercial. I don't know if Jeremy could share the link to that, but it's really fun. You guys might have seen it. across YouTube ads or on the TV. But after that, I went to Scholastica and achieved my bachelor's degree, and Mike actually reached out to me asking if I'd like to come audition for a co-host position. And, you know, immediately I was like, ooh, I didn't go to school for this. I'm not sure. And he's like, hey, why not? And at that time I looked down and I am 9 months pregnant with my second son. So I was like, wow, this timing is interesting. But nevertheless, I still went to the auditions and I saw amazing candidates trying out, and I was like, yeah, okay, why not? It's intimidating. I mean, if you're not from the production, digital world, it can be intimidating when you're seeing cameras and a green screen and all that jazz, a teleprompter. But I ultimately got it, and it's been amazing. So I think since then, I've done some voiceover work, some more modeling, and really opportunities are just opening up. So I think the one thing that I always say to everybody, young, mid-age, college student, older people, it doesn't matter. I always just kind of reiterate the same saying of, you know, if there's an opportunity that is in front of you, and if you can do it, do it. I mean, the worst that can happen is like, maybe you didn't like it, or maybe it didn't work out. But that's the one piece of advice that I always tell my kids, tell students that I work with. And I don't know, it's just amazing. So it's not very traditional, but keep your options open and really take any opportunity that's presented to you.
Great advice, Rita. Yes, that, and that, you know, even your 3 stories, because they're so diverse, you know, that, you know, each of our paths is like our own, and there, you know, maybe some of people, you know, some preordained kind of stuff, and some the choices that we make along the way that then carve that out to bring us to where we are. And if you're somebody who wants to work in media, in Indigenous media, you know, you have the power to do that. You make those choices and you prepare yourself so that you're ready when those opportunities come to you, that you can say, yes, I want to do that. Or if you don't feel ready, to just be brave enough to jump and say, yes, I can do that, right? Let's ask maybe one statement, you know, like a statement of encouragement for those students who might be leaving us right now.
I would just say, you know, keep your dream. If you want to become a producer, a content producer, go with that. Build on it. Learn from others. Seek out others for advice. Seek out others for how they broke into the business. I don't see myself as really being in the business, but you know, there are others out there that can help you, and search for those people.
Mike is very humble, and I've learned so much from Mike so far working on Native Report. I just want to say, if anybody is interested in potentially applying to freelance for Native Report, please send, if you look at the chat of this conversation, I put some details in there, and you can always reach out to us with any questions about that opportunity. And don't give up. Don't ever give up, you know, and journalists are watchdogs of the government. What we do in media is so important, and, you know, I'm glad to be a journalist, and I feel like we're just getting better and better in our coverage. And that's what we can do as journalists, is continuously improve. There's always something that we can improve on and learn about. So I would encourage that also too.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself for a second. So maybe I was a premature on my unsolicited advice, but I think, you know, I'm gonna wrap it up with find yourself a mentor. I kind of fell into one. Actually, it's Liz's mother, Bunny Jaakola. We were on a different platform than media, but she was a lady that, you know, unknowingly told me to keep following opportunities, keep following my dreams, my goals. And if you guys can all find a mentor and really just, you know, really bond with them, learn from them, ask them questions, I think that is invaluable. And I wish I would have done that a lot sooner. So if anybody has any more questions, you guys can find me probably on any social media platform. But thank you so much for letting us be on here, Liz. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. See, now I need to take a break because I'm going to be teary. That was so nice. Okay, we'll take a break. We'll be back.
Gigawabman.
Gigawabman.
Gigwabman.